modern America's relationship with privacy is a complicated one. On the one hand, most of us are willing to publish the most intimate details of our lives for the entire world to see. On the other hand, we still expect to have some control over what we share and what others can learn about us. When Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA had been spying on innocent people for years, listening to our phone calls and reading our emails, we were rightly outraged. But that was before COVID-19. In many ways, improvements in technology have made our lives immensely better. Thanks to the internet, we have an unlimited supply of knowledge at our fingertips whenever we want it, and improved data collection allows us to know more about our world than ever before. But there is a downside. When we surrender our personal information for the sake of convenience, we shouldn't be surprised when that same information is used against us for nefarious purposes. As we're seeing with the coronavirus lockdowns, governments are willing and able to use technology to track our movements, invade our privacy, and even enforce the law. Now that's a scary thought. When the Bill of Rights was drafted, the founders wanted to protect the privacy of Americans from snooping governments. Under English rule, the Stamp Act allowed British soldiers to search colonist homes at will in order to collect taxes. The act was so unpopular that after the Revolutionary War, it inspired the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. The Fourth Amendment protects Americans from having their personal papers, correspondence, and homes searched without a warrant issued by a judge. In short, it was designed to protect our privacy. Of course, the founders could never have foreseen the internet and the amount of electronic communication that goes on today. But the Supreme Court has consistently ruled that the Fourth Amendment still applies whether you're using email and text messaging or a quill pen on parchment. These rulings still haven't stopped the government from trying to snoop on its citizens, though, especially when that snooping can be justified in the name of public safety. For example, in Westport, Connecticut, police were caught using drones with thermal imaging cameras to enforce the state's social distancing order, singling out people who might dare to stand nearer than 6 feet apart. Fortunately, the program was quickly abandoned after a massive public outcry. But that's not the end of it. Big tech companies like Google and Apple have announced in April that they're working to develop coronavirus tracking apps that would let the government track you via smartphone. The nominal goal of such an app is to track the spread of the disease, but it's easy to imagine how much your privacy could be compromised when your every move is being watched. In fact, other countries like Australia, Spain, and South Korea have already started building databases of phones that may have been close enough together to pass the virus between their owners. India has also proposed smart wristbands that would monitor the movements of COVID-19 patients. This is an obvious cause for concern. Dr. Anthony Fauci has even expressed approval of an ID card system for patients who have developed an immunity to the virus. These cards could be presented to gain access to otherwise locked down areas and exempt the holders from some of the restrictions imposed on the rest of us. Throughout America's history, we have always rejected the idea of a national ID card. The history of Europe during the 20th century, with oppressive governments' obsession with documentation, demonstrated without question the dangers of this kind of policy. There's a reason why the Nazi or Soviet officer demanding your papers, please, has become such a cultural meme. Starting with the 1968 Supreme Court case Terry versus Ohio, courts in the US have given more latitude to what police are allowed to demand from civilians. Nevertheless, the courts have always held that there must be a reasonable suspicion of criminal activity in order to compel citizens to identify themselves. The idea of being forced to carry a special identification just to leave your home is thoroughly un-American. As the economy begins to reopen, Americans are being introduced to the concept of contact tracing. We are expected to surrender personal information before eating at a restaurant and install apps on our phones that let the government know where we've been and who we've been in contact with. Invasive tracking like this is reminiscent of the Chinese social credit system, in which citizens are granted or denied legal privileges based on how obedient they are. It would be naive to think that a network that allows the government to so thoroughly keep tabs on people would be limited to infection control, or that it'll just go away once the threat of coronavirus is over. We need not trade privacy for safety. Every individual has the ability to take precautions and the responsibility to prevent the spread of this infectious disease. If we're not willing to do that, submitting to be watched and tracked all the time won't make our lives any longer. It will just make them less private, less independent, and less free.